Welcome to Leadership Coaching. Each week, we explore fresh topics inspired by our coaching clients
and our guests to discover the essence of effective leadership.
Difficult people. That's what we want to talk about today.
Yes, difficult people. We all know a couple, don't we?
Man, we do. We do. I've got a lot more experience with difficult people than I like. I'm a lot better at it. They're not as difficult as they used to be, not because they've changed, but because I have.
Interesting to notice.
Well, and I've really been thinking about this a lot. And then your newsletter came out this morning, and the name of the newsletter is Difficult People. Perfect. I got to read this. And then I read the first things on your article. You say, whom are you making wrong? Whom are you withholding from, like information, acknowledgement, forgiveness, gratitude? Who are you attempting to convince? Who are you trying to get to do something?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great beginning to an article right there. Now let's have it be the beginning of this conversation. This is Dr. Martin Kettlehead, author of this newsletter that I'm just talking about, as well as a couple of books. The most recent one, Leadership is Relation. By the way, I just finished listening to the money chapter. What chapter is that in your book?
10.
And now you moved on. I think I'm on chapter 11 or 12 right now. Gosh, I'm enjoying your book.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And in fact, at the bottom of your article, you quote yourself, and it's going to be in my newsletter on Friday, the very same quote.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing can change if we don't first understand and accept what's so the way it is. Now, that would be enough. For a great quote just right there. But then you go on. You'll know when you've truly understood someone and accepted her the way she is, because that's when she will start to change naturally. And in parentheses, she may not change the way you want it, but she changes, end of parentheses. And then you finalize the quote with, she changes precisely because she's been heard. She no longer needs to assert herself in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
That's from pages 135 and 136 of Leadership is Relation. You've also written Listen Till You Disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And your website is that, isn't it? Listen.
No, the website is Listening is the Key.
Listening is the key. So, let's take it away. You wrote the article. Let's get going.
Well, as you read that, I was reminded, I hadn't thought about this when I wrote it, but I was reminded of my very first experience with that phenomenon of being so well heard that my life changed. You know, I was on this course to be an academic. You know, I have this deep love of deep questions, and I had gotten a PhD in philosophy, and but I couldn't see a future in it. You know, I liked the subject matter. I do it all the time still, but when I'm not, you know, doing podcasts or my coaching work, I love to read philosophical stuff and think about it, and I have a lot of writing on it, but I couldn't see myself, you know, living my life in the academic community and doing that kind of work, because it turns out it's rather lonely work. You're always alone, except for that 1 hour that the students are there in front of you, and that's glorious. But then they go off to, you know, party with their, you know, sorority brothers or fraternity brothers and sorority sisters. So I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my life? And I was explaining to a friend, Bob was his name. It's still his name.
It's still his name.
and he asked really good questions, like, well, you know, what else can somebody with your training do? What else would interest you? And he listened to me, not just once, but at several sittings, you know, and really got what I was dealing with and the dilemma. And he, you know, after days of this, he finally sort of summarized in one sentence. He said, "Well, it sounds like, Marty, you are an intellectual who wants to make a difference in the world." And it was just like somebody shot me right in the third eye, like boom, yeah, that's it. Oh my gosh. And from that moment on, my whole life jumped tracks. Now I was on this other track called an intellectual making a difference in the world. I didn't know what that would look like. You know, we're headed off in a new direction, but I don't know what the destination looks like. But that it was like it was a life altering moment. I was so gotten by him, so understood, so well heard. And so that was the first time that I experienced this very phenomenon that I wrote that paragraph about.
You changed because you had been heard.
Mm-hmm.
And you no longer
I couldn't
go ahead.
help but change. Like all of that sort of, cranky, you know, figuring outness was gotten. Like I didn't need to do it anymore. I knew who I was, like, in a new way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Something about um, something about presence listening reflected back helps me when it's happening for me to know myself in a way that I couldn't otherwise know myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm at a transition in my book right now. I'm transitioning from the 19-year-old kid who the reader or listener of the book has learned about and probably likes, maybe feels sorry for, maybe he's even admiring and impressed by some of the things. And now I'm shifting into the next 9 years of my life where I'm not really very proud of myself for the way that it went. And I've got this writing coach and I've got a publisher, and both of them essentially are saying, absolutely write your message, say what you want to say. However, keep in mind you've got a reader who wants to come along for the ride.
Mm.
And so what do you tell them? How much do you tell them? And so I just started a couple of days ago writing part 2 of my book in a real rough way. Like, I don't know if this is going to make the book or not, but I need to write this and say it, get it down on paper, just to have the paper reflect it back on me.
Right.
And so I started writing, and one of the things that I said was, if the current version of me could have a conversation with that 19-year-old version of me, I believe that what I would do was not give advice at all. I think what I would do would be to listen. And I would listen using the same listening skills that I've developed as a coach, and especially fine-tuned as an IFS practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just ask those kinds of questions. Oh, that's interesting. 19-year-old Bill Tierney.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that you think this particular way. Like, for example, I might ask my 19-year-old self, what do you think about yourself right now? What's the deepest, darkest thing you don't want anybody to know about you? And what is it you might be afraid would happen if someone found out? Those kinds of questions
Mm-hmm.
would have to change me
Mm-hmm.
at 19 years old if I could tolerate them, if I could be in the space long enough to actually let the question sink in and give it an honest effort to answer.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that we're having this conversation right now, because I believe it can be and almost always is transformational when someone can be engaged in such a way that the listener is so present that the speaker hears themselves.
Yes. Yes. That's that. That would be, constant renewal, constant represencing, right, of self. And by the way, I just, I want to promote that practice for our reader or listeners, the writing things down, writing down your thoughts so that you can see them and reflect that. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it makes a huge difference. In fact, if you're talking to some part like your younger self, it helps to use the non-dominant hand for that other, right? Than the you that's leading the conversation. I just finished a 2-year study with a group of 7 other people of what it's like to relate to your younger parts. We use the workbook called the Loving Parent Guidebook, where you get to be the loving parent of your younger parts. And one of the techniques that they taught that is used constantly in that book is this non-dominant hand writing, where you ask the question or you lead the conversation with your dominant hand. For me, it's the right, and then you respond in the hand that it's more awkward to write in, and somehow that helps draw out those more awkward thoughts that you want to get in touch with. It's a brilliant device. It's very effective, and even if you don't do the non-dominant piece of it, it's always good to write your own thoughts. Journaling is transformational. Just being able to see your own thoughts, maybe even coming back to them and reading them the next day or a month later and seeing that, oh, that's how I was thinking about it. It's a very good practice.
It is. And I've had some great experiences with it myself. I haven't gone through that workbook, which is the Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families workbook. Is that correct?
Yes, it's from the World Organization for ACA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I recently had an experience where I followed a process, and I'll try to think of the name of the book and then share it in show notes. But the suggestion was to spend an hour at least once a week, but no more than 3 times a week, and just to ask the next question that you'd like to have clarity about. Mm-hmm. It could be something as simple, or it could be something like business related. Mm-hmm. What is it that I need to do to expand my reach in my business? Mm-hmm. Well, now take I don't know, whatever it is, 30 minutes or so, and then just write. Mm-hmm. And then wait until the next idea comes, and then write some more, and then wait till the next idea comes and write some more. And I did this just one time while reading and listening to this book, mm-hmm. and came up with a complete marketing plan for my business that worked very, very well. Would not have happened had I not given it the time to just really consider. And so it's not my wounded child that's answering those questions in this case. And it's not my loving adult parent, that internal parent that's answering or asking. It's just me calling on different parts of myself to get creative. And who knows what energies I'm tapping into, inspiration, guides, who knows? I don't know. It's powerful.
Even more mundane use of writing. If I write down my grocery list,
yeah,
I can leave it home, but I will remember it because I had written it down. Whereas if I don't write it down, I'm just like, I look at all this stuff I need and I go to the grocery store. I don't remember it, but it's,
that's how I tried to cheat in Spanish.
I say how?
I didn't trust myself to be able to remember the Spanish words for the English words. Uh-huh. And the test, of course, was, here's these English words. What are they in Spanish? Mm-hmm. And so I would take 30 minutes and look up these words and write down whatever the English word was, and then write down the Spanish word. And I'd write them really, really tiny so that by the time I was done, it was on a little piece of paper that's about 2 inches by 2 inches, folded up and stuffed away in my pocket. So that when I was tested at school, I could pull that out and study it discreetly and not get caught, mm-hmm. and get all the answers right. I never had to pull it out of my pocket.
There you go. Right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. I tried to cheat.
So, right, yeah, it involves a whole other part of the nervous system. You get it through you, that information, in another way than just seeing it or just thinking it, right? And that it's very helpful to write. But anyway, we should get back to our topic.
Well, I was just thinking the same thing.
Uh,
Difficult people. Now, what does everything that we've been talking about, if anything, have to do with difficult people and the point that you were driving home with your newsletter?
Right. Well, the tendency that I'm pointing to at that very beginning that you point out is we make that challenge or difficulty, we make it wrong. We make it other is the main thing. We make it other. That's not me. I'm right. She's wrong. Or, he's got a problem, not me. Right? And so then there you're not listening anymore. You're not understanding. You're just separating from. And so all of the potential to get on the same page is lost, right? Even if you wanted to convince them of your point of view, it's not gonna happen when you're making them unable to understand you.
Now, why would you do that? Why would you make it difficult for them to understand you?
Well, I think there might be a number of conscious reasons, like, because I am right, because I think it has to go this way, because it's always been done this way. Like, there are a number of conscious reasons, but I think the sort of unconscious reason, which is hard to face, sort of bad news, is that they're reflecting a lack in us. There's something that, we are not, it starts with not being willing to understand them, not being willing to get in their world. Mm-hmm. I just watched a great example of this. I think it's just episode number 3 of the show Parenthood. So I just started watching this, and right at the beginning, you meet this family and they have an autistic child. They don't know he's autistic yet. And they're just, like trying to get him to be like them.
Right.
And it's just not working. And so finally they get him, he does get diagnosed. And the parents were like, okay, so what do we do? How do we get him to change? How do we fix this? And the doctor's just like, that's not the way it works. You got to get in his world first if you want any hope of bringing him into yours. And then the episode ends with, because the little boy, he insists upon wearing this pirate costume all day long to school and to church and everywhere he goes. And he carries this big cardboard sword that he's made around and slashes it around in the air and everything. And so the episode ends with the dad now wearing a pirate costume and they're
Oh, that's great. That's great. That makes me want to watch it. Where are you watching it?
On Netflix.
Netflix. Okay. Great. I'll have already put a link for that in there too.
As coach, I'm your dedicated partner, listening actively, fearlessly pointing out the blind spots preventing you from becoming your most effective and powerful self. I'll hold you accountable to living the life you want, even when you resist it. Go to listeningisthe.key.com. Now, back to the show. So that's the thing. I think that the reason that we would do it is that we are not willing to face that part of ourselves that is lacking, that is distrustful of the world out there, or that is impatient with the world out there, or there's something going on in us. And so we project the wrongness onto them, right? And
yes,
the point is that we are all one. And we all have a certain degree of autism. We all have a certain degree of, whatever it is we're putting on others. And that's the hard part, is to admit that and to dig into that and to be willing to accept ourselves as we are imperfect so that we can, you know, accept others and their imperfections too.
I want to take a little bit of time here, if we could. I think we have the time for this to explore some examples of what makes difficult people difficult.
Mm-hmm.
What you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Why would I consider someone difficult? And the first one, I'll get us started. I think the first thing would be if someone disagrees with me. That generates some internal reaction that's difficult for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that they're difficult. It's just that my internal reaction to them is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And we may find that that's the case with every example we think of. But so number one, they disagree with me.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of another one? Let's just play popcorn, go back and forth here. So your turn.
Yeah, well, I don't know if this is a you know a version of what you just said, but I don't know how to deal with them. Like they're like I was talking to a client today who was perplexed with how to deal with a husband who, as soon as he retired, just decided to spend his whole life scrolling through his phone and smoking weed. And she's just like, I don't know what to do, you know?
So, yeah, here's an example of her husband, for her, was a difficult person.
Her husband was a difficult person. And it's because she just like, I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss, which is very revealing way to put it, right? That's exactly what I'm saying is.
Yeah. So people that put us at a loss, like we don't know how to respond.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like bullheaded people. I'm thinking of a boss I used to have when I worked at Citibank in New York City many, many years ago before I ever discovered coaching. I was a temp on Park Avenue at Citibank, and my boss was just like so bullheaded. I was like, you won't talk to me, you won't reason with me, you don't make sense to me. I was at a loss.
All right. Someone with so bullheaded people. I would say people who don't clearly communicate. Unclear communications makes things difficult.
Yeah, or lack of communication, right?
Unclear or lack of communication.
Yeah.
And maybe this is enough to do a little exploring with, like, what is it about these different elements that we've described? Unclear or no communication or lack of communication, bullheaded people, people who, like in the case of the woman whose husband is retired now and scrolling and smoking pot all day long. What is it about that has her at a loss? What occurs to me is that he's not meeting her expectations. He's not showing up the way she wants or needs him to, and doesn't know how to manage that.
Correct.
Like, it creates an internal confusion for her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is not the guy that I married. This is not what I expected. This is not what he said not what he's agreed to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, given who it is that I'm committed to being in this marriage, how do I respond to this? And I'm at a loss. I don't know. How do I both be kind and loving and confront this, for example?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And I was going to take it in a different way. I'm going to stay with your question right now. Are we getting at what
is it that what's difficult about difficult people? I guess is the really the question that I'm curious and interested in.
Yeah, and I don't know if this, the gentleman that I quote, Michael Stone, in his book Yoga for Life How to Balance. He gives a lot of examples too of this sort of phenomenon, and I think his point is that it's always pointing back to our own inability or incompetence or lack of some kind, right? And so it's much easier to rather than embrace that, where our knee-jerk reaction is to put it on them. I don't know if that's the kind of answer you were looking for. Were you looking for something else?
No. That's certainly part of it. I was thinking as you were telling me about that of an instance, an example of that just happened recently in a coaching session where a client is telling me that they had produced a piece of art and someone asked them, what's the meaning of it?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're an artist, and this is the way I related to it, I used to identify as a musician, played a lot of guitar, and then composed a lot of songs too, probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 songs over the years.
Wow.
And when I was composing those songs, what I loved the most about it was the music of it.
Mm-hmm.
However, every song also had a set of lyrics that matched the music, and that was fun too. But it wasn't nearly as fun as actually creating the music and then getting my fingers on the guitar to do exactly what I wanted them to do, and then being inspired for the next movement part of it and what I wanted that to sound like. And that whole creative process was just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was doing it, it didn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was an experience that I was having that I absolutely loved and enjoyed. And just coincidentally, some other people that happened to be listening liked it too.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, that's the way I related to this woman who created this piece of art, and then had this first person who, the way she described it, this essentially was in her face and insisting that she tell her what the meaning of her piece of art was.
Mm-hmm.
So for sure, the person that was insisting that she define the meaning behind her art was a difficult person.
Yes.
And as she was telling me about this, I wondered, because I can relate, people, how nervous I would feel when I knew I was being scrutinized for my art. I felt vulnerable. I felt fear that I was about to be criticized,
Mm-hmm.
that I'd be misunderstood, that something about the exchange of feedback from this other person was going to mean something about me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just began to imagine, if I didn't have parts of me activated in situations like that, where they would rise up and want to protect me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was purely in self, if I was completely self-led,
Mm-hmm.
when someone comes in and asks me for something like that, how might I respond? And what occurred to me was I would respond honestly, authentically, and with curiosity for them. Like, wow, you're occurring to me as someone that's really, really pressuring for this particular answer. What is it that, I may just ask, what is it that you're asking me, and what's important to you about your question?
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't seem that like anything I'm offering is satisfying you. So now that person would probably view me as a difficult person. If in fact, maybe not, but they may, that they would no longer be difficult for me, because now I'm interested and curious about what's happening over there
Mm-hmm.
with that other person.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to share that. That's
I think that's right at the core of this. Like in political conversations, and I don't want to have one now, but as an example, and there are some people with whom, I can sit down and say, look, I'm of this point of view and you're of that point of view, but I know that you're a great person and wise and, have a big heart, and I am too. So let's look at this. How come we've come to such different points of view? And then there are other people, it's just like, no, you believe that, there's no way we can even talk.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So it's that, that recognition that we're all God's children. Come on, let's start there. right? I know that you must have a good reason for wanting what you want. And let me try and understand that better and have you better understand why I have my position. And that's how progress gets made.
Absolutely. What something that you just shared with me reminded me of something that happened this morning as I was scrolling through on my phone. I want to read you something, and I just want you to notice what happens inside, and maybe the listener can listen to this and notice what happens inside for them as well. You brought up the political conversation, and you don't want to have that political conversation right now. Neither do I. But something that you just pointed out has me want to share this experience with you because it's so interesting. All right, here we go. Here's the post. I know not everyone likes him or thinks he's the right choice. But the fact is, more people voted for him than anyone else. He's clearly the right choice and is an absolute legend in his professional career. This man has been a hero to me and my family, and he deserves our country's respect. He's sharp-looking, rarely wrong, a great family man, and he knows how to win. He makes every team he's on better. The fact that 3 out of 394 members, one single baseball member voted against Ichiro is disappointing. So he's been talking about Ichiro Suzuki. I bet you thought he was talking about somebody else. My response, by the way, to that post was, I almost unfriended you. So I had this, oh man, all these, I can't believe this guy is saying these things. I thought I knew him. Mm-hmm. And then when I realized he's talking about Ichiro, you son of a gun. See now, if what I thought that was what it was, that would have been difficult. That would have been suddenly this person who I have respect and admiration for would have been a difficult person for me. Yeah, as you say, like, gosh, there's no way to have a conversation with this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I noticed that there were, as I was listening to that, there were some things I agreed with, some things that made my blood boil, other things I was just like, I don't really care much about that. It was going up and down. Like my temperature probably went from 50 to 100, 50. But that was interesting in itself because that shows the places where I'm on. I would consider that a difficult person. Not everything he said was difficult, but some of those things were difficult for me to swallow. If they applied, like
to who you thought they applied to,
exactly.
Right. That was fun.
Yeah, I mean. This also, just I was thinking about. I just started dating somebody right before I came down to live in Mexico for the winters. It was really bad timing, and I think I was in that way a difficult person. He might not agree, but that's what I felt like. I was being difficult. Like, wow, we're just getting into this, and now I'm going to go away for 4 months.
I've wondered about this. Yeah.
I asked him, to talk to me about it, and I want to, get into your world and understand how you're feeling. And he wanted to understand me too. Like, why is it important for you to go away right now? And what does that mean about how you feel about me? Right. And so it was that mutual respect was there. It wasn't a reactionary conversation. It's like, okay, we're challenging each other here. Let's talk about this. And then he said the most beautiful thing. He said, well, I'm thinking long term about us. So, there will probably be other times in this long relationship that I foresee us having that we will, need to be separated. I don't wish that, but it's highly likely. And so I'm thinking, this is one of the, just one of the things that there is to live with and to work with and to get creative around. How do we deepen our intimacy even as we're miles apart? And that just, that was like such beautiful music to my ears. Like, wow, thank
What
you.
a beautiful response that is.
Mhm.
Love it. Yeah. Wow. Huh.
Yeah, I found a good one.
Yeah, you did. Marty, we need to begin to wrap up. As you know, I've got kind of a dead stop here in just a few minutes. Anything else you want to comment from your article or about this topic of difficult people?
Well, for me, I come away from it mostly. I'm reminded of the sense that they'll like I have all of those characteristics of the people that I consider difficult. I have them in me, and all of the good things about me, they have too, right? And so they're to like this is a reflection of me. You are me. I am you. We are. It reminds me to look at my fellow human beings as me, right? Like you look at your parts as you, right?
Yes.
And to integrate, to feel the integration, and like this is me. I'm looking at that other human being across there. That's me, and that's how we can source um, progress and the nurturing of compassion, of course, and wisdom too.
Yeah. Great. Marty, I'm also wondering if someone wanted to read this article that we've been referencing, do you have it online accessible for someone to read?
Yes, you can go to LinkedIn. It's an article that's posted on LinkedIn
Okay.
under my
Okay.
name or under the title "Difficult People."
Difficult people under Dr. Mark Kettlehut.
Mhm.
All right. Enjoyed our conversation. I sometimes I think, we should probably plan these out more and, create some bullet points and talking points, but we never seem to lack anything to say. We fill up the time before we run out of things to say.
It's pretty fun. Yeah. Thank you for, you know, putting the focus on this work that I created today.
All right, Marty. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Leadership Coaching, where we help you learn to lead with confidence and compassion.
If you enjoyed listening, please share it. Don't miss a single episode. To subscribe and to get show notes, visit leadershipcoachingpodcast.com.